Okay. Good morning, everybody. We will be delving straight into the topic, which is your task two, which will be on articles of association. We have done a task in the previous month, which was for memorandum of association. So keeping the flow, we would be doing articles of association this month. And I will be, just giving you a brief overview of articles of association, and then I will be handing over your tasks to you, and I will also be sending a sample as well as all the documents necessary by tomorrow morning. So keeping that in mind, I will just be sharing my screen. So I hope my screen is visible. I hope I am audible. Please someone let me know in case I am not audible or I'm not visible.
Yes,
So
ma'am, you're audible and your screen is visible as well.
thanks, Indra. Okay, so articles of association is is your task two, or is something which you will be learning about in the form of your task two. Um, so articles of association is the second most important document required to be filed with the registrar for registration of the company. The articles of association of a company are the rules, regulations, principles, procedures which govern the internal management of the company. So, in this context, the MOA lays down what needs to be done, and the AOA basically states how something is to be done. So, basically, in this context, we can compare it with MOA as the constitution of the company, AOA as the statutes of the company. That is how a lot of your company law teachers will teach you how to remember AOA and MOA, how to distinguish between the both of them. Is the fact that MOA um, is the crux, or is the main document, or is the very is the first document that you need to be registering with the um, registrar of companies, whereas the AOA comes just in, just below it, in importance order or in the necessary order. So MOA basically lays down what is to be done, and the AOA lays down how a particular thing is to be done. So MOA and AOA go hand in hand. Okay, moving on. There are certain definitions of AOA. Um, the first one is according to Section 2, Clause 5 of the Companies Act, which in which it states that articles, so it defines articles basically. So it states that the articles of association of a company, as originally framed or as altered from time to time, or applied in pursuance of any previous company law or of this act. So a lot of your statutes don't give you proper definitions. Company law is one such statute. So we find another definition by J. Charlesworth, which is one of the um, nicer definitions I found. So he says that the Articles of Association is a document regulating the rights of members of a company and a manner in which the business of the company is to be carried out. So what J. Charlesworth states is that the Articles of Association is basically a document. Number one, it regulates the right of members of the company. Members of the company include shareholders, directors, you have your employees of the company, you have your external resources. All of those are part of the come under members of the company, and it also regulates the manner in which the business uh, of the company is to be carried out. So it basically says that uh, the memorandum of association is what needs to be done basically. And the Articles of Association gives you step-by-step procedure as to how to do it. Like for example, in your memorandum of association, you have something called a subscription clause. Subscription clause is basically people who've joined as shareholders and directors. You mention all of their names, you mention their addresses, and you mention how much shares they have taken. Now, in the Articles of Association, you mention how you can how these members are elected, how these members are chosen, what are the essential characteristics that these members need to have, or what are the qualifications that these members need to have. All of those are mentioned in the Articles of Association. Another example would be your, let's say, your object clause, right? You have your object clause in your memorandum of association. In the same way, in the Articles of Association as well, you'll have a clause which states that how what are the criterias under which the objectives or the objective clause can be altered, how many how much how many votes or how many what is the amount of majority it needs to be altered. All of that is mentioned in the Articles of Association. um, Moving on, there are forms of AOA, or these are basically how an AOA needs to be submitted. The every company's Articles of Association must be, number one, printed or typewritten. Number two, it must be divided into paragraphs. It must be numbered consecutively. It must be dated. It must be stamped. And it must be signed by each member to the MOA, who shall add his address, description, and occupation in the presence of at least two witnesses. So this is something you need to keep in mind. Printed or typewritten, you're anyways doing it. It must be divided into paragraphs and numbered consecutively. Please keep in mind, it must be dated. There is a, um, I think on the right hand topmost corner, you have the date mentioned, or it will be something somewhere on the extreme bottom. You need to mention the date, and then it must be stamped. This is something you can't do, but keep in mind if you ever, if in the future you ever make an AOA for a company, just remember it needs to be stamped with the sign and seal of the company every single page. Um, and it must be signed by each member to the MOA. It must be signed by each member to the MOA. People who've signed the MOA must also sign the AOA with his address, description, occupation. Three things need to be mentioned. That must be in the presence of at least two witnesses. Please keep that in mind. Um, okay, moving on. We have the contents of AOA, which is mentioned in the Section 5 of the Companies Act. It's a very lengthy discussion. I don't want to cut it off in the between, so I'm just gonna move on to the all. Like we will come back to that in the next, in the next 40 minutes that we have, because it won't. It'll take a minimum of 20 minutes for me to even explain all of that to you. So we will just do alteration of articles of association because this meeting's gonna end in like what 9 minutes. We can finish the rest of it, and that chunk we can do in the next meeting link. Okay, so we have alteration of articles of association. Alteration of articles of association is mentioned under section 14. Um, According to section 14, a company can alter its articles at any time and any number of times, but there are some restrictions to alter the company's AOA. So the company that basically mentions what are the conditions and what are the restrictions for the alteration of a AOA. So it says that articles can be altered only by passing of a special resolution. Number one, articles can be altered only after approval of the tribunal NCLT. In at least in where I stay, it is the NCLT. There are some places where you have um, I think the company's forum or the company's tribunal or something like that. Um, in in Bangalore, in Karnataka, we have the NCLT. Um, uh, and another, it needs to take permission. The company needs to take permission, um, and it must be approved by the tribunal or NCLT or company's board or whatever, whichever is the authority for companies act. Um, you must be taking approval from them. It must be passed. It must be altered only by passing a special resolution. Thirdly, a copy of the approval order of the tribunal must be filed with the registrar together with a printed copy of the altered articles within a period of 15 days in such manner as may be prescribed, who shall register the same. So, Articles of Association is another registered document with the registrar of companies. So if you've changed the Articles of Association, you need to submit all of that to the registrar. Like you need to submit the resolution, you need to submit the approval, and you also need to submit a printed copy of the altered article. Now, some companies do it in the way that only what they've altered, they submit that, and some other companies submit the entire thing. They print everything out and they just highlight or they just bold or they just I don't know they do some formatting just so that the registrar knows that these are the clauses which have been um, you know altered, but these are the places in which they'll be placed. So this is something a lot of companies do, but there are some small companies, small scale business enterprises, and you have MCMEs and all of that. They tend to just file only the altered articles. Like they will just print out what are the extra articles that they've added. They will, and um, in another sheet they will mention what are the articles they've removed, and that needs to be registered with the registrar of companies within 15 days after getting approval from the NCLT. And the registrar of companies will basically register that particular document, and Um, he will add it in his records as well. Then moving on, we have limitation to alteration of AOA. Now, the first limitation is the alteration of articles of association must not be inconsistent with or go beyond the provision of the Companies Act 2013. The alteration of the articles of association must not exceed the power which is given by the AOA. Now, the memorandum of association is like the constitution of companies, and the AOA is like the statutes of companies, or they are like the extra laws or the extra um, it is an extra document which is added, which is supporting the MOA. So AOA must not exceed the power which is given to it by the MOA. Now, the alteration must not purport or sanction anything that is illegal. Now, you've registered your, giving you an example. For example, you've registered your articles of association with the registrar of companies. Um, but what happens is that you are one of the promoters and one of the shareholders, and then suddenly you realize that um, the opium market is, really blooming, and you understand, or just to make it a little bit more easier, because you understand that the arms and ammunition market is blooming. You have people who are going on war. You have people who need ammunitions, etc. So you just change your articles of association to say that, okay, we will also manufacture guns. We will also, then we'll have raw materials sourced from here, here, and here. We will, like all of that, and just for your information, manufacturing of arms and ammunitions without license from the government is illegal. So unless you have a license, you cannot, manufacture arms and ammunition. But if you start doing that, that is illegal, and the NCLT can, just shut down your company completely. There will be police officers sent to shut down your company. Um, There will be at in situations where where the or the company goes on to messing up real bad. You even have warrants issued against the shareholders, directors of the company. You even have non-bailable warrants for that matter. This is something I saw and I went through as well. I went through in the sense one of my friends, relative, went through that. So that is something you need to keep in mind. Then moving on, you have the alteration must be made for the benefit of the company with bona fide intention. Bona fide intention means anything in good faith, and the alteration must be made for the benefit of the company. You need to keep in mind bona fide intention and benefit of the company before you alter your articles of association. Then the alteration of the articles of association. Okay. Now the alteration must not in any way increase the liability of the members. Now, for example, we had the liability clause in our memorandum of association, and that the liability of members, the articles of association cannot change. It must remain as is. It cannot be changed. Um, that is something we need to keep in mind. Again, this is not something which is important. So I will just be ending this meeting because we just have a minute left. Please join back in another 10 minutes because we have a big chunk of the um, articles of association still pending, and I will also be handing out tasks to you. So yeah, thank you. Uh, just give me 10 minutes, and this meeting will convert into audio and video recording, and then I will send the link again.